Okay, this is leaf morphology part 3. We're going to start with leaf shapes. So this is one leaf from Kentucky coffee, but the leaflets, this is one of the more common shapes. They're called ovate. So it's wider at the bottom and then it gets narrow at the top. So that's ovate leaf shape. This one's not quite on dogwood, not quite as ovate. That's actually almost more elliptic. Guys, it's nature. There are exceptions to every rule. This we can call cordate, shaped like a heart, right? Kind of like you used to make when you were a little kid for mom. When you make her Valentine's Day card, you fold it in half, you cut. So that's cordate, like your heart. This is elliptic. This happens to be on a beech, excuse me. I always think it's like Mick Jagger, big lips, right? So it's equal kind of on both sides. One side's not wider than the other. So this is that yellow wood again. So this one, if you notice, if it were like this, we'd say it's ovate. But since it's the opposite of that, we're calling it obovate, the opposite, obovate. And then finally some leaf, lobed leaves, right? So we know our oak and our maples. So remember, we're going to count how many lobes it has using the veins, and we got to get to the vein video, but you got the midrib, and then as these come off, each one of those secondary veins is a lobe, right? Same with the maple. This is called palmately lobed, right? Because I have the midrib and then those coming off. So that's 3. Actually, there's 2 more down here, so that would be a 5-lobed maple leaf. If you notice, I'm always turning them over a lot of time to look for things. So that's leaf shape. Oh, here's one. So this, if it were like this, we'd call it a narrow ovate leaf, right? But again, it's the opposite kind of, so that would be a narrow ovate shape. Again, guys, it's nature. They're going to vary dramatically. Okay, next we got leaf margins. So if it has nothing on it, like this, right, the margin is entire. So that's an entire leaf margin. Here we have a serrated leaf margin. So if you look, it has little tiny teeth on it. It's serrated. So serrated leaf margin. So that's in focus. You can also have ones that have really finely serrated margins, really tiny teeth. So that's called cerulate, or some people just say finely serrated. And then we have doubly serrated, right? So this is a birch. We have a big tooth with little teeth on it. Again, I'm going to turn it over and look at the back. Right? I've got the midrib. I've got the lateral veins coming off, going to a large tooth right there. And then in between the large teeth, I've got little itty bitty teeth. So that's called doubly serrated. Serrated 2 times, doubly serrated. This one's not super common. This is the beech again. Notice how the leaf margin is kind of wavy. It goes up and down. We call that undulating. And yes, you always have to say it that way. It's undulating leaf margin. And then I think the last one is crenate. So the way I try to describe crenate is, instead of these little jabs sticking out like a tooth, they're kind of dented in. So it's a crenate leaf margin. Okay. So quickly, based on the last 2 things, this is from a tree of heaven again, or not again, but tree of heaven. So I'd say that the leaflets are a narrow ovate shaped, right, because they're wider at the bottom and then they taper down, and they are entire, right? So a full description of this would be they're alternate, pinnately compound. The leaflets are a narrow ovate with an entire margin. And then sometimes you do have little lobes down at the bottom, if you can see those. That helps separate tree of heaven from black walnut. And then the final for this video is going to be veins, the veination, right? So there's a few different things. Dogwood, one of the best ways we identify dogwood, the whole genus, is because it has what's called parallel veination. So again, if you notice, we have the vein, the midrib goes down the center, and then these secondary veins parallel one another as they go down the leaf, right? So it's called parallel veination. So for dogwood, you always say it's opposite, it's simple, they're ovate shaped, and they have parallel veination. That's how you know it's a dogwood. And again, we'll get into that. And then another pretty common one is pinnate veination. So just like a pinnately compound leaf, remember before you'd have the petiole and then the midrib with the leaflets coming off of it. Well, here I have the midrib, and then those veins go all the way out to the margin. So this is actually called elm pinnate veination. Oaks are unique, and they're called oak pinnate, because again, you got the midrib, and then those go out to the large lobes. Here's a sweet gum again. This would be the same whether it's a sweet gum or a maple. This is called palmately veined, right? Because all of them come from one spot, just like palmately compound. All those, and again, each one of those, that vein that comes from the base of the top of the petiole, that means I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lobes on that plant by counting those veins. Here's another example of palmately veined on redbud, right? They all come from one spot. Now on redbud, we don't have lobes like we do on oaks and maples, but it's still considered palmately veined. And then the last one that's pretty unique, many of you know this, is ginkgo. Ginkgo's been around for like 250 million years on the earth. And if we look closely at one of these, this is called dichotomously veined. They all originate from one spot. I don't know if you can see that very well, and they go out all the way. It's called dichotomous veined. Very unique, easy to identify ginkgo. Again, many of you know it. You learned it in school. It's shaped like a fan. Okay, that's it on those.